the BROxFIRE Podcast.
Well, it sounds so good because I thought of it myself.
Why don't you fuck off?
Already did. All right. Welcome back to the BROxFIRE Podcast. We are at episode 9. My name is LJ Regine.
And I'm Will Fuller.
And it's time for you guys to man up, cut the bullshit, and just laugh. Bro. You'll see that we actually have another bro here beside us. We've got our guest.
We
today.
have our guest.
Yeah. So this is Mr. Richard Giannotti, who goes by G. G, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How you boys doing?
We are fantastic.
That's awesome.
So just to tell you a little bit about G, he's flow-grown, meaning he's from Fort Lauderdale, right?
Fort Lauderdale. If you don't know what that means you're not from Fort Lauderdale. So
It's true, or from Florida. He went to the U. Although Will was like, don't say the U of Miami because if you say the U, everyone knows what that is. Is that true?
That's national.
Thank
There's other
you, buddy.
big schools out there.
he's like the U of Miami. I'm like, please get rid of that.
Where
That's
is it?
embarrassing.
There's only one U.
Yeah, there's only one U.
He played professionally for the Angels and the Cardinals and currently is the president of the Athlete Asset Management Division at Global Wealth Management. Did I say that right?
You got it right.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here today, man. We're really
My
happy to
pleasure.
have you.
appreciate
I'm
it, man.
excited about it.
Yeah. Okay, so first thing we want you guys to do before we jump into this is hit the subscribe button. Hit it.
It's the red button
It's red.
on the bottom. Just click it.
Just click.
We don't get
That's
any
it.
of your information. We don't really care. We just would love for you to subscribe. That's all we ask.
That's all we care. Even if you don't like us, just
Yeah,
subscribe.
Subscribe
It's
and
all
then
good.
exit out. That would be even awesome.
All right, well, what are we drinking today for Down the Hatch?
So we've been going back and forth on the name. As you know, we talked about doing local.
Yes.
Well, you know what? Today we're not going to do local. I know G is a big Scotch drinker.
Ooh.
And we kind of wanted to appease him and, get what he likes to drink.
Okay.
There's no local Scotch, bro, because it's from
Fucked
Scotland.
up. Local Scotch, that's true. Good
From
point.
Scotland. So, but we're still going to do it. We're still going to drink it. It's called, we've been going back and forth on the name. Tomatin, I think we're going to.
Tomatin or Tomatin.
Tomatin.
Your guess is as good as mine. That
Yeah.
sounds right.
But you know what? The most
Tastes
important thing is how it tastes.
Yes.
And so we're going to.
Well, let's try it.
We typically try it. Cheers to you guys.
Cheers.
Real quick.
Rose.
Rose. And then just let us know what you think.
Oh, it's good. It's real good.
It's got a little bite to it.
Yeah, I like
Got
that.
Yeah.
I like the good bite.
What's your favorite Scotch, G?
I like Macallan.
Yeah. You can't go wrong with that.
It's
classic.
Good. Macallan 12 is good. It's affordable. Special occasions. Macallan 18 is really good. I like Johnny Black. Johnny, that's
Yeah.
He's kind of like your everyday. It's a little more smoky, but
Is there a time that you would just be like, I don't want Scotch, or do you feel like Scotch is good for every occasion?
no. So to me, Scotch is more of like at night. Kind
Okay.
of like after a long day of work, maybe a cigar or something like that. Usually during the day, stuff like more clear tequila, vodka during the days. But I can't
Alright.
drink Scotch during the day.
All right.
Not when it's hot outside.
Yeah.
We're doing it right now, though.
Well, yeah, but
Well,
it's
we're
cool in here.
indoors.
It's cool and do it.
And it's daytime. No, it's not. It's nighttime.
It's whatever time
Yeah.
it is. So you never know. But no, for me, being the first time I've ever had Scotch, it's actually really good.
So first, you've never had a Scotch before.
No, I never really ordered Scotch
He
before.
really hadn't had whiskey, really.
No, this is like anybody who's listening is taking this adventure with me
Oh.
because I've
You're the
just
best
tried bourbon.
focal point then now.
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of got a little bit of a smoky taste in my mind.
Mhm.
What I taste with this, it doesn't burn it's not as strong as the bourbon we did last week.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this one I could
It's a little smoother.
a little bit smoother.
Yeah.
So, but again, some people would like that burn more like that. I think that's more of like a bragging right. I think, and so
I think it's an acquired taste.
I agree.
A lot of times, the sharper the bite, the more you have it, like an acquired taste, the less of a bite it kind of has. That's something I used to drink with my father all the time. We'd always have like a Scotch or anything. That was his drink, so I kind of adopted to that, which was great.
Yeah, I think, my first memory of Scotch was my grandparents because it was always 5 o'clock. When it was 5 o'clock, it was Scotch with a splash of soda.
Scotch and soda. That's an old Italian thing
Yes.
up north.
Yep.
Our families are all from the same area. I
Yeah.
believe,
Where are your families from?
So
Or your family?
Originally, like the New York, Connecticut area.
Got it, okay.
New Haven. My dad went to PC, which I know you're from.
Really?
Rhode Island.
Yeah, my dad went to Brown, so yeah.
So he's that was his path, man.
PC. Wow. Well, this guy's from way farther north, up in Maine.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Maine. My family originated from New York. My dad from New York. My mom also lived in New York, but from Sicily. But they moved to Maine. My dad wanted land.
Yeah.
And he bought it. He bought 18 acres.
So that's like the Italian, depends on where you're from in Italy. Like, so you're Sicily, you know, a lot of farmland. So my family is like from Avellino and Naples area. And so when they came over from Italy, like in the 1915, 1920 time, they bought a bunch of land. Or first they went to Brooklyn and they're like, we're farmers. What are we going to do in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
And then they ended up in New Haven, and they eventually ended up acquiring maybe like 200 acres. I mean, land was dirt cheap back then, right? But they were farmers, and so they farmed and they realized that, you know, they weren't going to be able to compete with the southern farmers because of the winter climate changes. And so they really kind of springboarded into more of the flowers and flora stuff. And so they had a bunch of greenhouses. And I got one of those, I guess, weird for normal American people, but not for Italians, like a really ginormous Italian family. Like my grandfather was one of 14, and my grandmother was a twin of 12.
That's huge.
And so basically, you were born, started walking, and you worked on the farmland. Yeah. So
hey, free labor right there.
That's why they could keep acquiring more land. Yeah. They'd have to pay for all the labor.
My dad has 6 sisters, and I mean, a lot of that is like the post-World War II baby boom, but like it's kind of an Italian thing to have a big family.
Yeah, my mom was a baby and 7.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah, they know what to do. They got it done. They're like, we're trying to create a baseball team here. So.
And how many kids do we have? 0.
Yeah, I don't have any.
So, yeah.
That we know of.
Yeah. So, but, you know.
I got a great future stepson at home. He's a big part of my life. I love
so that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good to have that. You know, I mean, my nieces and nephews are part of my life. But, yeah, no kids. Not sad about it either, though.
You have cats, though.
We do have cats.
Cats, dogs,
and they're like
pets.
We yell at them like they're kids.
Yeah. Okay, so one of our sections that we do, G, is called Civilized or Savage, where we take a story of something going on and we share our opinion on it.
Yeah.
One of us is usually more savage about it. One of us is usually civilized. So feel free to chime in and let us know your thoughts on the matter. We're going to talk about a topical issue because it's kind of on everyone's mind. So last night, President Trump unveiled guidelines for eventually opening up the economy in several phases, depending on your location, to combat the coronavirus pandemic. The plan calls for 3 phases to reopen the country based on the severity of the coronavirus outbreak in each individual state or region. The plan, which Trump announced along with the formation of a bipartisan council of lawmakers from both chambers of Congress, outlines recommendations for governors to develop their own plan to reopen. It also includes a number of criteria that must be met in terms of numbers of infections and hospitalizations before they can open up. So generally, the long and short of it is, if your state has 14 days of a decrease in, I believe, the infection rate, then you are good to go on phase 1. So there are some states that are really chomping at the bit to get reopened. There are other states, other places like Broward, for example, where we haven't actually seen our peak yet. It's supposed to happen at the end of the month, which means that we may not actually reopen until the middle of May. And there's a lot of controversy surrounding this idea, primarily because there are a lot of people who feel it's time to fucking get back to work. Right. And then on the other hand, there are a lot of people who fear that they are going to die and fear for their lives and that we should give this more time.
Right.
So, Will, where do you fall on this issue?
I'm taking the savage approach on this just because I'm a little confused.
Okay, why are you confused?
I'm confused because 2 days ago, we were having a conversation about the middle of May, maybe even June, and then sometimes you've even heard the topic of July.
Right.
Now it's like we're putting it into the governor's hands. They have the option. So I know it's their choice and they could do it. They could make the point to say, we're going to open now. And what I just want to know is, I just want to have more of a clear plan on what's going on. And I don't think it's right that certain places could open up before other places open up.
Why?
Because this thing is spread. They're saying it doesn't matter if you're in California, New York, it doesn't matter where you are. This virus is viral. It's there. You're going to get it. It's going to catch. So what you're saying is that one business is able to open up and another business is not. I just think that there needs to be more of an understanding of what's going on. Because right now I'm confused. The money runs out from the government. And then all of a sudden we're trying to get the money. And then they say, no, we're not going to get the money. And now it's like, okay, now it's time to open up.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying,
And that's frustrating.
and I feel the frustration. I think that what a lot of people don't understand is that we do have a very decentralized federal government, and it really does empower states to make decisions for themselves. Where there's a lot of people, and I think this is where the president's stuck in a rock and a hard place. A lot of people are like, "You need to do something now," and he's kind of like, "Well, I can only make these recommendations, but it's really up to the localities to decide what's best for themselves." And it's almost like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So it doesn't matter what decision he makes or our government makes.
But then I can't agree with that, because what I see is that, let's use Florida as an example.
Okay.
We didn't have a lot of strong cases like New York, right? In the beginning.
No, but we're one of the highest.
We're one of the higher populated places.
We are.
California, that's just going to happen naturally.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that we were having people on the beaches and all this stuff, and people up north were seeing how much fun we were having down here. And they're like, they're the cause of the coronavirus, basically. It's spreading. They're doing all this. So they basically put pressure on us to shut down all the things that we were doing, which we really didn't notice it too much. And then all of a sudden, now the president's saying, now it's in your hands. And he's got to make up his mind.
Yeah, but the governor was the one who made the decision to shut us down.
Right, but he was feeling that pressure. There was an article that was going to be put out a couple days
No, there are a
ago.
lot of Democratic lawmakers. Our governor is a Republican, and there are a lot of Democratic lawmakers who were like, "You're being very stupid. Why aren't you closing down the entire state?" And he was like, "I'm going to close down the counties that are the most populous."
It's a mixed bag.
Chime
Totally.
in, please.
Yeah, feel free.
You have public health versus economics, right?
Mhm.
And so, you were running into an election year where an incumbent president's running on the economy, which was at an all-time high prior to all this stuff happening.
Yep.
So you have politics kind of getting mixed in here.
Right.
The reality is this. It should be up to the governors because they know their states better than the
I
president.
agree.
Even though President Trump has a residency in Florida, has in Mar-a-Lago, and he's familiar with the area, it should be up to the governors. Florida's a perfect example of a mixed bag. And what I mean by that is West Palm Beach South is very different than West Palm Beach North, right?
Agreed.
West Palm Beach South is heavily tourist. You have two major ports, Port Everglades and Fort Lauderdale, Port of Miami and Miami, and then you have three major international airports between Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm. It's high season for all of your snowbirds coming down, tourist season. So to your point, with all the spring breakers or people on the beach, a lot of those people don't even live here.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so we have all these influx of people coming in that the rules, and I don't know how this comes from a political standpoint, but I understood what the governor was doing by shutting down certain counties because Tallahassee, where state capital is completely different demographic as far as vacationers, tourism, the influx of people in and out than South Florida here. And so it should be up to the governors, just like I heard Trump say last night that, Montana, South Dakota, all those
Very low populated states. Yeah.
With low rates. They're going to open up today if they cleared that 14-day trial period. But it should be up to the governors, in my opinion. I feel like it's a scary time. It's nothing to bullshit about. It is real. It can pass very freely, and I don't think we've technically seen our peak yet. But my biggest problem is you have so many symptomatic people, and I've known people that have had the symptoms of it, that because they went to go get the test, and they went through all the process, when they didn't have a temperature over a certain degree amount, they wouldn't give them the test. And to me, that's not right because that's just promoting more spreading of people.
So you think there's a real lack of testing, that we have incomplete information?
I think that was, especially, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, absolutely. And
which
so,
is horrible.
People that live in South Florida, like, I go back and forth to New York all the time. And I was just up there at Christmas time. Like, I'm a firm believer that this stuff was going around,
in December.
But it's like it's cold. People start getting the normal cold, the flu season. So nobody really knew if they maybe had it or didn't have it. And you're in all these social settings, and so it's tough. I mean, I remember. I don't have any symptoms, but there's so many asymptomatic people out there that you just never know.
Right.
And to your point, one of our members here at the gym, that I spoke with the other day, he's like, I've had pneumonia-like symptoms for a week. It's been really hard for me to breathe. My chest is really tight. This was maybe Thursday. He got his test on Tuesday, and he was like, I don't get my results until the following Monday. So it's like it's not a quick test. it's not very available. And the only reason they gave him the test was because he's like, I have pneumonia-like symptoms. Right. So it's really not easy right now for everyone to get tested. I think, to your point, if the testing was more available and it was easier, then I think we'd have more confidence in opening up, because then you could be like, all right, I'm going to go get tested. I want to open my business. How am I doing? Okay, cool. And then you could say to your members or your clients or whoever, like, have you been tested? Right. There could be a better way to handle that, but I don't know if we have the resources for that.
It's coming.
We're going back on the whole governor thing, like making the decision. And one thing I know, and I guess the part that's frustrating for me, why I'm a little bit savage on this, is like, if the governor makes a decision to say that, we've had the amount of time that this is cleared up, the testing period, how do we even know? We don't really know where that's coming from. If we have somebody that's not from this area that just happens to be down here and they test positive for it, does that mean that this area has it, or does that mean just that person that just happened to be stopping down or coming down has it? I feel like it's going to be very hypocritical to Florida,
because we're such a tourist destination.
Yeah, because we're in New York, California, Florida. It's going to be so hypocritical. If we open up, they're going to be like, oh, it's their fault. So that's why I'm just like, we just need some more guidance than just like let the governor make the decision, because it's a lot of pressure put onto that governor.
Yeah, but if you think about the governor of Florida, right? I mean, he's almost like the governor of a nation, of a tiny nation, right? And there are so many competing interests, so many competing industries, so many competing population, right? So I thought he was smart to actually close down the 4 counties that he did that were the populated counties, because you're right, like Tallahassee, like all the northern counties, like, they're not seeing the same sort of issue, but then you have people being like, the whole state needs to shut down. And it's like,
we can't do that. Here's the other thing.
That's where the media comes in that I had to have a problem with is I get it. They're trying to get clicks. They're trying to get, viewers. And
it's all drama.
It's all about advertising.
So it's so far left or so far right. Mm-hmm. And you know what? The information needs to be in the middle. And what the middle is clear and accurate.
When that happens.
If you don't know, you don't know. Right.
And who do you trust right now? Because the trust in the media is at an all-time low. I think it's really like tough. Single digits or barely double digits, because there's always a bias.
That's what's crazy, because back in the day, like when I remember all my parents and everybody talking about how much credibility your nightly news anchors brought.
Right.
And so that used to be an honorable, not that it's dishonorable now, because there's a lot of great reporters and media people out there, but there's just so many ones that aren't, and it causes problems.
A lot of people look, I got an iPad right now. I could be considered the media. I could type a blog. I could do whatever I want. If people start listening to it, putting it out there, now I'm a media source. Like, I could talk about Fort Lauderdale. Look at us. We're on a podcast right now.
Right.
Theoretically, it's just our opinion, but we could be any form of media to people who are listening. So that's the sad part, and that's why it's gotten crazy that we can't have a middle ground, because if people are going to put their opinion on it instead of stating the facts.
I think what to kind of finish this up is sad about this is, after 9/11, our country really came together, and it didn't matter if you were a Democrat or Republican, if you were right or left. And I guarantee you right now, like, I see friends who I know who are very, very left, and they're just like, it doesn't matter what the president says, they're opposite. And then I have friends who are very, very right. It doesn't matter what anyone else says, the president's right. And there's no unity, there's no coming together. There's just kind of like, it's crazy. It feels like we are a very, very divided nation, and this has really pointed that out for all of us. Yeah. And it sucks, because we're the United States of America. We mean something, and it doesn't feel like that.
That's why we have that. We're supposed to be united.
No, but we have red states and blue states now, it seems like.
Yeah,
I know.
I agree. It's a tough time to be dealing with this, with politics kind of getting involved. This isn't about politics. This is a public health.
This is being affected, and that's why I chose savage. You chose civilized on this, and what you would be?
I'd say I probably split the middle, because I think it shouldn't be up to politicians to let us go back to normal. It should be up to the Public Health Administration. It should be like Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci and Dr. Gottlieb, all these people that are qualified individuals to say it's healthy to go out there, not somebody that is running on a political platform and they want to get the economy up, or somebody that's on the other side of it that is just a fearmonger and saying, it should be up to it shouldn't be up to this special cabinet that they designed around his daughter or whatever. Not that they're not intelligent people. I mean, I think she's brilliant. She's a little strange, but she's brilliant. It should be up to people that are qualified in the public health.
I agree 100%.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that discussion. And we have always tried to stay away from politics, but we just kind of skirted. And listen, at the end of the day, it's hard to avoid that right now with everything going on. Yeah. So it's good for us to talk about this. So G, you're our guest. Normally we have Man About Town, which Will talks about dating advice, fashion, other things.
Yeah.
And I have Pro Bro, which we talk about entrepreneurship. So with you being here, we kind of combine those two, and it's the G show. So we want to get to know you a little bit better, hear your insights on a bunch of things that we have, and we're thankful that you're here with us today. You're a very, very impressive person, great resume. You've had a lot of experience in multiple areas, so it's really a treat for us to have you here.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so basically it's just starting off on questions and just being just open to whatever you want to say to these questions. But our goal is just try to learn a little bit more about you and our audience to learn a little bit about you. And kind of we talked about the questions. We wanted to make sure that these questions were something that we wanted to know. I think at the end of the day, if we ask the questions that we want to know, the audience is probably going to want to know, and I think that that's important. And if they don't want to know, well, then we don't give a shit.
And Will's more of like a let's get to the point, and like I want to find the
That's the
information.
military side in it,
Yeah.
you know?
And I'm like, how does it make you feel?
Yeah,
that's like
That's the artist in you.
Yeah.
So that's why we combined well with this
Yeah.
whole thing. So my first question is, knowing that you played baseball, like I played baseball all the way up, and I played Legion. You probably know about that. You probably dominated that. But I went all the way up, and I started playing Legion. And that's when I found out that, because I did well in high school, but I also, then I realized you get to Legion's a whole different game for me as a kid. I realized that there were guys that were better, that could throw harder, they can hit the ball further, they could run faster. And so my question for you is, when did you realize that you were better than your peers in baseball? And then when did you figure out that you could go pro?
So I grew up in a very sports-oriented household. We talked about earlier, my father played college baseball and, actually got drafted by the Giants to be professional, but then he got drafted to Vietnam. And so he ended up playing, as he joked, played in Korea for 2 years, came back, to the United States. So sports was a big part of our household.
Kind of in your genes.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it, for sure. But to answer your question, my father, the way my age fell, I'm an August baby, so the way my age fell, I was always the young one in my grade. But my dad always had me and my best friend Tyler, who you might have met, who's also from down here, played in the big leagues as well. Our dads always had us play up a level. And so we were always playing with older kids. And so it may not seem like a big difference, maybe from a 20 to a 22-year-old, but when you're talking from like an 8-year-old to a 10-year-old, that's huge disparity in talent and the way the game's played. Right. You're talking about moving from coach pitch to kid pitch, which is a huge undertaking. And then the bases extend and the mound gets back further. And so the game's faster. And that's one thing that we'll kind of hit on is, as an athlete, you're always getting up the pecking order, and then you get sent back down, and then you have to work your way back up, and then you get sent back down. And so it's a constant grind. But I always knew I loved baseball. I played other sports, football and ice hockey were my big sports too. And so I always had a nice balance where I never got burned out, which is one of the biggest things. Like I tell friends of mine that have kids or just other parents that I know that have kids is, make sure your kids don't get burnt out. Make sure they're doing what they love, because I've seen the game at the other side of it where it's a business. Yeah. And it's a what have you done for me lately business. And so I was always very good, but I was very humble about it. Like my parents never made me feel like I was that, show kid, all-star, I had a lot of good seasons, but I think because we played up, you were never the best player in the league. You were just the young guy that was, man, this kid's really good. He's competing with all these older guys. And so that was kind of the lane that I was always in. I got to high school and I went to St. Thomas Aquinas, which is a renowned academic, but also sports, nationally recognized high school. And, it was one of those high schools where, there's like 2,500 students. That's big for a private school down here. But sophomores didn't really play on varsity. And so, there was 2 freshman teams, and these freshman teams were both filled with guys that played, college baseball everywhere. Then JV, and then 2 years of varsity. Well, for me, my junior year, which is supposed to be your big year to get your scholarships, I come off my sophomore year being one of the better players on the team, and I went my junior year and I didn't get any playing time. And we had a new coach that came in, and I stopped playing football. I stopped playing hockey. I had a scholarship to go to Minnesota to play ice hockey, but they were like, you can't play baseball or football anymore. So I slowly started trimming out the sports I was playing to just focus on baseball. And so the way the summer circuit was back then, which is completely different now, back then it was about development and practicing and going to play in tournaments. Now it's about tournaments only, and you have your private coaches. So the game's evolved in that capacity. Mm-hmm. But that's when you really got seen by a lot of scouts on the pro side or the college side. And so you built up all this momentum to go into your junior year to hopefully get your scholarship, because that's when all the big prospects get their scholarship. And I got 13 at bats my junior year.
Wow.
And so that was only a humbling experience, but it taught me a lot moving forward that I could always look back on and say, this wasn't the low. You learn when you hit, not want to say rock bottom, but at the time of my life, what else do you know as like a 16-year-old kid, that's all you know. And so for me, I went, a lot of guys were like, oh, you're going to transfer. I was like, no, this is where I made the decision to go. My parents were very supportive of whatever I wanted to do. But my friends were there, this is what was going to land me on the map if I ever had a chance. And so my work ethic took over. My dad said, if you make this decision to stay, you got to continue to keep working and have a positive attitude. And that's one thing I'll be forever thankful for my dad, is instilling that work ethic in me and the discipline and the don't fucking cry, kind of mentality. Yeah. Like, the world isn't going to apologize to you. If you want it, you have to go earn it and get it. And so I went from being absolutely devastated my junior year and not playing to having a great summer and then getting back on the pro scouting radar. And then my senior year, I was voted captain. I decided to stay, I wanted to stay. I wasn't going to leave my friends in St. Thomas. And I was voted captain, became an all-state player, which is one of the best players in the state. I was drafted officially by the Giants out of high school in the 20th round.
That's where I got the 13.
And so I had a really tough decision to make. And so when you're in a situation like that as a 17-year-old kid, have to make a life-changing decision. Now, somebody might say, oh, 20th round, that kind of sucks. But, I actually received calls very early on, like in the second, third round. But I had a number. I was always a good student. I wanted to go to Ivy Leagues. But for me, the University of Miami was my dream school. It's a top 50 business school. On top of that, I was a 4.5 student. So I had a lot of leverage as far as negotiations went. So, back then, this was 2001, I kind of said if it was like around 500,000 or 600,000, which was like, second round, third round money back then, I would sign and start my career. And so the Marlins called in the second round and said, hey, we're thinking about drafting in the fourth round. I had a really good relationship with the Marlins at that point in my life. Man. And so, which would have been great because it would have been local and they sucked at the time. So you probably would have moved up faster. But I just, I was open and honest with them. I said, I think at this point I'm going to go to school. But for me, I have a tale of two different draft stories because I was not really expected to go high in the draft coming out of high school. I was 17 years old. I wouldn't even been able to sign my contract. My parents would have had to co-sign because I was a minor. But I went from like not having much expectations and then getting like the call very early to my junior year of college, meeting with every team. You're going to go in the 2nd to 5th round and not getting a call the first day and being absolutely devastated. So that's helped me build my foundation of what I stand for, but also relating to kids that I work with that are preparing for the draft, whether it's high school or college, and that's a piece of a focal point on the sports and entertainment side of what I do now.
Yeah. So in that moment where it's draft day and you don't get a phone call, what did you draw on to keep your head straight and focused? Because I think anybody in that situation could lose it in a certain way. And how did you keep your head on?
I think a lot of it has to do with things that you go through in life,
right?
Life's experiences. And so for me, I look back to my junior year, I didn't get any playing time and look where I was a year and a half later. And so that's coming out of high school. But then in college, I had the best college experience. I'm still friends to this day. Some guys are still playing in the big leagues. Some guys are, retired and have families. So I had a great college experience. But for me, it was like back to the drawing board. I remember after the first 10 rounds went by and I was so confused. I literally shut my computer off at my parents' house and I drove back to Miami. I called our strength coach up and I was like, I need to get a workout in to like just flush all my thoughts. And I remember sitting down with my strength coach at the time and I said, I was really upset. I was devastated. And so, to meet with every single organization. I was coming off an injury, and I maybe didn't have the best year that I could have had. I was a career 300 hitter in college, and I kind of had a little bit of a pullback that junior year, but I had the talent was there, the tools were there. I met with every team. They told you everything you want. And then, I think I got kind of red flagged as potentially injury prone, or there was rumors out there that I wanted to go back and get my degree. And so I just had a workout. I had a good talk with people that I trusted. I had an agent at the time who I still talk to this day. And I said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to go back for my senior year. I'm going to get my degree and fuck them,
Yeah, I mean, I think that anybody who's in the business world or doing something like that, whatever it is, you're going to have challenges, you're going to have struggles, and you're going to have adversity. And I think what you're talking about or pointing to is the ability for you to feel whatever you're feeling, be upset about it, but then get your head on straight and make the next decision.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of times people get stuck where they're at and they can't get out of it. So it just shows how you ended up progressing your career, is that ability for you to be able to feel your way through it, adjust, and move forward.
Yeah, you don't have a choice as an athlete, especially baseball players.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is the failure rate in baseball is so high, and you're so successful. You fail 7 out of 10 times hitting, you hit 300, you're an all-star.
You're an all-star, yeah.
And so
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome in the sense of, man, I can succeed 30% of the time. Great. It's a mental fuck. Because I played almost 10 years professionally, and there'd be days where I know I'm one of the best players in the world, right? You're the top 1% of probably everybody that picks up a bat and can swing, right? Some of my best friends that are NFL superstars, super athletic, you put a baseball bat in their hand and they look like,
yeah, I've seen them play wiffle ball on ESPN. It's embarrassing. I'm like, you can throw a football like almost like 100 yards and you can't hit a ball.
Yeah, and it's hard. But like to my point is that there'd be days where I'd be in the parking lot and not even want to go into the stadium because I'm like in a 0 for 25 slump and I feel like I've never picked up a bat in my life. And somehow you just have to flip the switch and be like, oh, today's the day I figure it out. And so there's 2 parts of it. One is that's why it's so important to have a routine, not only in life and business, and and I still have my routines to this day, but because a routine gets you back into a comfort zone where you can get back to being successful. And the second one is you have to have a short-term memory, because to the pitcher that I'm facing today, knows I'm 0 for 25 and he's got confidence. And if I don't go up there with confidence, I don't have a chance to even succeed. And so that's why baseball players, I think, sometimes get an arrogant rap, and it's rightfully so. A lot of us are.
You have to be.
You have to be, because there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And if you want to be successful as an athlete, and especially a baseball player dealing with failure, you have to tiptoe that goddamn line every day.
Right.
I think that there's nothing wrong with being arrogant, because I think sometimes that's what's... No, I agree. But seriously, though, I think, and as a business owner, I feel that I feel that I have the best product, and I have to feel that way, because in order for me to continue doing what I do, I have to tell myself that, psych myself up, because when there's days when, things like this happen, the coronavirus, and my business goes, I have to find that confidence in myself and be like, okay, well, you were able to start this business, you were able to get yourself this far, this is just another bump in the road, keep fucking moving forward, keep pushing through.
Absolutely.
And it takes it's not even confidence, there is an arrogance you have to be able to be like, fuck this, I'm going to move past that.
It's belief, right? Because you're getting people to believe in you.
Right.
So if you don't believe in yourself, nobody's ever going to believe in you. And so I think that's the big thing with sports too, is the mental side. That's when my career took a different path for the positive, which I spend a lot of time in educating young athletes to help them mentally more than anything. And that's how I build relationships and doing what I do, even though it's on the financial side. If more financial advisors could relate to athletes like I can, because I grew up in the locker room, I've been through the struggles, I've had the successes, my industry is about relationships. And so is yours.
I think all industries are really built on that.
It's so true.
Unless you work in a back office in the middle of nowhere, it's like they don't want to talk to people. We don't have a phone number. Yeah, of course, because you don't want to talk to people. They're not built up relationships.
And that's the most important thing, is to understand who you are and to maximize that talent, because there's so much failure. There's going to always be people that are telling you you're not good enough, and as long as you are passionate about what you do and you believe in it, you're going to go a lot far away.
So one of my favorite CrossFit athletes, that is a top athlete, the thing that sets them apart and their coach is that person, because the coach is focused for them on their mental game more or if not as much as, but more than their physical game, because it really is. It's a mental game. Whenever you're competing for anything, it's the story you're telling yourself about what you're doing on yourself.
Right.
That's going to make the difference more than how talented you are.
I agree. I mean, talent. You have to have talent.
Yes,
right?
have
You
to have
be
it.
talented.
Baseline.
That's non-negotiable. But talent that is in control and of their mental mindset and knowing what they're trying to do is
Watch
the talent
out.
that becomes
Right.
extremely successful.
Yeah.
And then the talent that has a good mindset and is talented, that is very disciplined and
Work
almost
ethic, yeah.
methodical. Those are the ones that become the Kobe Bryants, the
Yeah,
Michael
the good,
Jordans,
the good
just
to
the
great,
relentless.
great to legend. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So playing baseball, I know just from playing high school and like I said, Legion baseball, which was kind of just kids, that there was always crazy things that happened. What would you say your craziest baseball life story
That you feel comfortable sharing.
that you feel comfortable sharing, or that won't, if this ever gets out, that people will be like, bro, we talked about not ever telling this story. So whichever one that you didn't get.
So, there's you have a lot of downtime when you're playing in professional baseball, right? I mean, most people say, oh, it must be nice to work like 4 hours a night. And it's like, no, I'm at the stadium at 1 o'clock every day. So you have a lot of downtime. And I was in the clubhouse, being from South Florida, I grew up with a Latin kind of culture and very strong Italian roots. And so you were kind of more of a chameleon in the locker room. I could relate with all the black guys, the Latin guys that were foreign. They're not even like just the American Latin guys, like the foreign, the Dominican, the Puerto Rican. And so I was kind of like, I was friends with everybody, but I was also a prankster.
Okay.
And there's just something about me that just fires me up. And so I'd always find one target a year that would kind of be my focal point. And one guy was like this sweetheart of a guy, big dude, bigger than I was. He's probably like 6'2", 260. I'm 6'3", 225. So he's a big dude, great athlete, but from Oklahoma. And so he's kind of like a good old boy and all shucks kind of guy. And I got one of these days, like this is in the minor leagues with the Angels. I think we were in like South Bend, Indiana, or somewhere Midwest. And he was convinced that the hotel we were staying in was haunted. And so
That's
this to me, I wasn't even thinking about playing a prank on him. I was just getting so annoyed that he just wouldn't shut up about this fucking ghost in the hotel. So I was like, I got a couple of guys together. I'm like, hey, we're gonna fuck around with them. So we had like after the night game, we had like an afternoon game, and we all went out to eat. And so I was able to steal his room key card, and I went in and I gave him what's called the floating bed. And so, I mean, why he believed it, he's just a paranoid person anyways.
Yeah.
But I gave him the floating bed is where you go into the hotel room and you take out the ironing board, you take the top mattress off, you put the ironing board on the box spring, and then you put the top mattress on the ironing board, and then you remake the bed. So the bed is floating at like a high level. And then on the other bed, I put like the Bible out and opened it up on the pillowcase. And so when he came back, I was a couple doors down. He came knocking on my door because he wanted to show me like how, because I was listening to this stupid story all day, and so I was like playing it off like, oh my god. And so when I was in there, I was like, man, I went back to my room and I latched his door on my way out, and so I grabbed my remote control and I went in. I snuck back into his room, and I was hiding in the bathroom shower. And I just kept turning on the TV, turning off the TV, putting on like 666, doing all the stupid. I was like 21 years old. And so he's freaking out to the point where he's like going to smoke cigarettes out on his balcony, and I'm dying laughing. And then, flipping the faucet sinks on. And the best part of the story, which I could not believe where this came from in my head. But we ended up going. We had next day was a Sunday 1 o'clock game, so we were at the stadium like around 8:30, 9 o'clock, and we're having chapel. And he our coach at the time was very religious, and so I told the coach, and I got all these people in on it. We're playing the game. The umpires know the prank I'm playing. The other players know the prank I'm playing, except him. And so it's just spiraling out of control. And so it was a weird series where we were leaving like on a Tuesday, which is weird because usually you play like Monday through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then you usually go home. And so for some reason we were we were staying an extra day. And so I remember I took the early bus back from the stadium. He must have been getting treatment. And I went into the hotel desk clerk, and it must have been like, it was at night. And I was like, hey, man, are you going to be here in like 30 minutes? And he said, yeah. And I was like, I gave him a $20 bill. I was like, hey, I'm playing a prank on one of my teammates. And he goes, okay, what do you want me to do? I was like, he's going to ask you about his room. He's really freaked out. He's convinced his room's haunted. I was like, just tell him like somebody died in that room like a few years ago. And so the guy starts dying laughing. He's like, oh, this is going to be fun. So I'm hiding out.
Everyone's up for a prank.
I see the bus roll up, and I had some other guys like gas him up to like, well, go ask the front desk guy. Maybe they know something, you know? And so I remember watching from outside of the lobby windows and just seeing his face drop when he was talking to this front desk guy. And I knew I got him. I was like, I got this guy. And so I go stumbling in. Now at this point, he's freaking out. He knows I'm a prankster. But even with knowing I'm a prankster, he's still scared out of his mind. And so I was like, well, let's just go look at the room. While I was waiting for that second bus to come, I came and I turned his room upside down, almost like it was like possessed, like an exorcist style. And so when he came in, I was still a little uncomfortable. I'm like, this guy's going to fight me. He's so scared, he's just going to swing on me. I got to be prepared to just throw down with him. And so we ended up like having like 10 guys coming in the room, and he's like, he's calling other hotels to go stay at a different hotel, like to the point where he doesn't even stay there. So we go in, and he starts telling a story about everything that's happened to all the new people that are listening, and I just start dying laughing. And I was getting ready to run out of the room, and he was so relieved that it was made up, but he still didn't believe it. Like I had like the name of his girlfriend he was like fighting with on and off, and I wrote it in toothpaste on the mirror. It was bad, but like it's the fun, crazy kind of story.
Yeah.
That was, that was
wow.
Big prank.
Don't watch out for this guy.
I know. I'm learning something about him. I'm like making notes as he's talking. I'm like, pranks. Okay, that's good to know. Like all of a sudden something will be wrong with my vehicle, and I'll be like, G.
Mm-hmm.
But like they'll be like, it wasn't G. He's in New York right now. I'll be like, no, it was him. So with Andrew, that's actually awesome. I love the pranks, and that's one thing about baseball I've noticed is like we just like to prank each other. People like to prank each other, and as long as it's good humor, nobody gets hurt. I think that's always the best part.
It's kind of what dudes do to each other.
Yeah.
Totally. Bros do. Why? People be like, why do you do that?
Because
I don't know.
Because
That's just what we do.
We want to see how far we can go.
So on to the next question. Is like a big fan of the hit TV show Ballers. I heard that you were involved in some way. First, how do you get involved with something like HBO? And then second, how are you involved with that show? I've been so interested
So HBO is such a first-class organization, and you talk about fuck you money. They have just ridiculous money. But one of my friends that I've known from Miami for a long time, I've known him since college. He's a few years older than me. He's been in that production space for a long time,
Right.
Music videos, everything. And so he's one of the producers for the show. And so they filmed the first 2 seasons actually down here. And that was, the season 1 was kind of right when I was, I had just finished playing, I retired. And so it was a really tough time for me mentally. And so I was kind of just, hiding out, trying to move on. And so season 1 came, and season 2 came and passed. And then I ran into JoJo, like, I think we were out in Miami, and he was telling me about the show he's working on, and I didn't realize it was Show Ballers because I was a big fan of the show. And so I said, JoJo, what the fuck, man? And he's like, what? And I was like, dude, like, this is what I do now. Like, I've been doing this for, at this point in time, I think I'd been Global Wealth Management for about 1.5 years. And I was like, I created a sports division. I'm not playing anymore. He thought I was still playing. And so one thing led to the other. Season 3, because of the way the government took away the tax credit to film in Florida, they either were going to have to move to New Orleans, Georgia, or back to California. And so they decided to shoot season 3 in California. And so we stayed in touch, and I was like, I'd love to be a part of it in any way, shape, or form. I mean, for me, it was free marketing. It was credibility. There'd be so many guys where I'd meet with that are athletes and be like, oh my God, you're like the show Ballers, and I could never say anything.
Right.
Well, now I could be like, yeah, I was on the show and I was involved with the show, like behind the scenes. And so it's a credibility standpoint, but it's so much fun. So I did it was season 3. as when I was really had my most involvement with the show, and JoJo, who his real name is Joe Crutel, who is Rob Corddry and the ball guy, and so his name is Joe Crutel in the show, so it's named after my friend who's the producer. And so I don't know The Rock, Dwayne, like really all that personally, but we have our Miami connections, and so I reached out to him and we started communicating, and so when I was on set, I got to hang with him a little bit. Super cool guy. But for me, my involvement with the show was, I remember I did my spring training run to see all my players in March in Arizona, and then we were filming at the Cosmopolitan for season 3 of Ballers for the episode where they, are looking to move the football team to Vegas, and so ahead of time when I was in Arizona, he emailed me. He's like, hey, I got some stuff for you. Can you look over some of this dialogue and see if this would be what an athlete would say to his financial advisor and what the financial advisor would say?
That's so cool.
And so I was like, absolutely. So I skimmed it over. I took out some stuff that I thought was not really compliant, but more importantly, didn't make sense. That's not how a financial advisor that's in this capacity. That might be how a normal financial advisor talks. We're two different animals.
Right.
And so it was really fun. They put you up at the Cosmo. We filmed at the Cosmo. This is one thing that I was unaware of because I've never been in that industry before. Yeah. But the amount of shot time that they film, I mean, we filmed easily 16 hours in one day, and we ripped it in 3-day shoot for that Vegas scene. And so for a 22-minute episode, you're just filming hours and hours of content, and it's crazy the setup. So, we're at the Craps. So side note. So they asked me, with compliance and everything, like I didn't really want to take a pay for it, because it's like an outside business activity in our field. And so they said, well, if you're not going to take payment, like, can we put you in a scene? Who's not going to turn that down? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was like, absolutely. So there's, a scene at the Craps table with Ricky Jarrett and Travis Scott and The Rock and RJ Bell. And it was just a fun time. But that scene probably lasted like a minute and a half on camera. We did that for about 4 hours straight. And it was like 10 to 12 takes with the cameras at a certain angle. And then it was 10 to 12 takes putting the camera in the craps pit and having it on like a lever and then pulling it out so they can get the dice shooting in, right?
Wow.
And then, but in between each angle change, the producers and directors are in Video Village, which is like a makeshift thing inside the casino that they built so they can watch everything and sign off. Okay, we got the shot. Let's move to the next angle. And so there were so many different shots, and it was just cool to be a part. One of the coolest guys in the industry. And at first I didn't know who he was. I knew he had like a practice squad stint with the Rams because I had a buddy that played with the Rams that knew him, and that's John David Washington, it's Ricky Jarrett.
Yeah.
One of the sweetest guys, just very humble, very good actor, very professional, but just one of the guys. And you can tell because he grew up, he played, I think, Division III football maybe, or Division II football. He was a really good athlete and, had a practice squad stint with the Rams, I believe. And so he knew what it was like being in a locker room, but it's Denzel Washington's son.
Wow.
And so you'd think that being your dad, one of the greatest actors to ever live, you would have an ego, be arrogant. Couldn't be more opposite. And so him and I chopped it up, and we became friends, and his career has taken off. He's done a lot of good movies since then. But you build a lot. It's like being back in the locker room because you're building relationships. I got to see a side of the world.
So much time. Like in my previous life, that's what I did. I was acting in New York, and it was like hurry up and wait. So like you would show up to set, and you'd have to be on time, but like you wouldn't be shooting forever
unless you're number one.
Unless you're first on the call sheet, then whatever.
That's DJ. He showed up whenever he wanted to show up, but he was so professional. He showed up, do his stuff, and then get out.
And you just sit there and wait for them to set up the next shot, and But that's really awesome, man. That's an awesome experience to have.
That's cool to hear. No, I think that's awesome, and like you said, who wouldn't take the chance to be? I would love to be that guy walking by. I always joke around like, could you imagine being that guy in that scene that just walked by?
Yeah,
I would do it.
You could be an extra.
I would love to be an extra.
Do it, man.
Just walk in. If you hear me out there, I'll be extra in the extra. So another thing that I was reading when you like your long resume of awesome things that you do. I'm gonna butcher this name. So We
we're
talking-
going to come up on a little section here. We're going to butcher a couple of names.
Yeah. So Kiplinger.
Kiplinger.
Way off.
Yeah.
So they said that you were a contributor. They actually did the quotes in what I was reading. It deals with baseball, correct? And tell me more about how you contributed.
So Kiplinger is more of a financial editorial magazine type of deal that people in the financial space will read. There'll be articles, and so our managing directors have they contribute to it a lot. And so I think it'd be great to do a piece on how athletes or take it high income earners relate to other high income earners or people trying to become one of those high income earners. And so I drafted up the piece, and with anything else you produce, you have so many different levels you go through with making edits and stuff like that. And so the gist of it is I just wanted to kind of show peel back the cover on the sports space. A lot of people don't expect to feel sorry for athletes making millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on who you are. And but there are a lot of things that people that are still successful, making a living, can take advantage of same kind of concepts. And so one of the things I wanted to focus on was, obviously, I'm not a CPA, and I work with a good CPA that deals with athletes, which is paramount to have if you are an athlete or a high income earner, especially if you're earning income in other states. And so as an athlete, if I play for the Marlins and I live in Florida, I'm in a tax-free state. But if I go and I play the Cubs, I'm in Illinois, I got Illinois state tax for 4 days. And so when you're earning that much money, and imagine you're playing 162 games a year, that's a lot of income you're earning in a different state. So it's important to have a good sports accountant to be able to go back and have to file all those taxes and states to get kind of money back. And so that was one of the things we talked about. Other things is, for example, I'll have prospects that, especially on the NFL side, that start making money right away versus baseball players. You get your signing bonus and you don't make shit for 4 or 5 years until you get to the big leagues.
Right. And
so on the football side, these guys, they'll, there's merchandise money. There's, you do card contract money where you, they do your players cards and they pay you. And so they pay the players union direct, and then the players union pays you. Well, if that's going to come in all on your same income, I have these guys open businesses because they are a business. And so any kind of money that comes in from the players union on marketing stuff they do gets paid to the business. Then they can pay their agent out of the business. And so it just kind of splits off what their W-2 income is versus what their 1099 income is. And so you can manage taxes accordingly. But there's other stories where you have a baseball guy, and I had the number 1 overall pick in the draft for baseball in 2016. He was a Southern California kid. And so, he signed for over $6 million. He's 18 years old. He doesn't know his ass from his elbow. Great parents and great kid, but, he's 18 years old. I don't expect him to know that, And so, he had to go back and forth with the team he was drafted with and try to say, and on the baseball side, they want to split your signing bonus up in 2 years so they can make their accounting books work that way. Right? And so they wanted to give him half his bonus in 2016 and half his bonus in 2017. And so I went to the organization and I said, listen, give us the least amount you can give in 2016 because he was a California resident. California, he's never filed taxes because he was a minor and his parents claimed him as a dependent. But now he's going to be filing taxes on his own, and I don't want him to file taxes in California because that's an extra 11% off the top.
Damn.
13% in his tax bracket, that is state income tax. And so I wanted, at the time, with his organization having a spring training facility in Florida, I wanted to get him registered a Florida driver's license. I wanted to get him, so we ended up agreeing. We got 30% of his bonus of that $6 million on 2016, the rest on 2017. By 2017 rolls around, he files his taxes during 2018 for 2017. Then he was a Florida resident, and so California couldn't come after it. And so
that's awesome.
It's being tax efficient. It's being smart. I didn't go to, I took accounting classes, and I'm not a licensed CPA, so I can't give tax advice. But you have to have the resources to provide to your clients. But I've been in that setting before and understand how you need to be effective with everything.
What would you say at this point with what you're doing with the coronavirus situation is the biggest challenge you're facing with your division?
So with the sports division, it's not being able to be face-to-face. I've already had to cancel 3 trips, one to Houston to see a big prospect, a spring training trip to Arizona, and then obviously one to New York. And so,
Can you do Zoom meetings?
yeah,
Or is
so
it not the same?
I do Zoom meetings all the time. Thank
Yeah.
God for that stuff. It's so great because the face-to-face contact is really how you build relationships with athletes. You know, these guys are just like when they go through the agent, courting period.
Mm-hmm.
They love getting taken out to dinner. They love getting all that stuff. But if more athletes interviewed financial advisors like they go through the interviewing process with agents, I think more guys would be protected and be with somebody that had their best interests in mind.
Right.
Because a lot of agents are going to sell you all the bucket of goods. Oh, we'll do your marketing. We'll do your contracts. We'll set you up with a financial advisor. Right. We'll get you housing. We'll set you up with a real estate agent. And it's like, you know what? That's fine. But your agent should do what he does. Your agent should
do what he's best at.
Right.
Yeah.
Let him negotiate your contracts. He doesn't know shit about money. You know, I'm sure he may know about money because he makes a lot of money.
And I think because you have lived the life and you've lived through it, like who better to advise you on something like that?
Then that's so I went through 2008 as a 24-year-old kid and lost a third of my money because I was with an advisor in New York City. That was a hot shot. I chose him because of all my other friends that were big athletes or major league guys were with him. And when 2008 would happen, the banking crisis, I couldn't get a hold of him. I could only talk to his junior person on the thing. And so it made me not trustworthy. And what happened is I pulled all my money out, lost a third of my money. And now, mind you, I had a finance degree. But just because I had a finance degree doesn't make me qualified to make decisions. I was living a lifestyle in baseball. You fall out of touch with your money because you're in a different city every 4 nights. You got weird travel schedules, 6 a.m. flights playing that day. Like, it's very easy to get disconnected from it. And so I always said, if you asked me in the middle of my career if I'd be a financial advisor, I told you you're fucking crazy.
Yeah,
right. I don't want to be anything like any of these guys. They're snakes. They're snake oil salesmen. Like, I don't believe in them. Right. But then I get to the point where who better to like build something and be who is true to me and can speak the same language that these kids are and educate them not just about life, but about the financial side. Because, I'll get out there and hit with my players and throw with my players and it's just how I'm wired. Like if more financial advisors could do that, I'm sure they would do it to build relationships. Yeah. But you're in the relationship building business. And so you have most financial advisors that have worked with athletes like the recognition of, oh, I work with this Pro Bowler or this All-Star. And a lot of them are good. So don't get me wrong. A lot of them are great and they do right by their players. But there's a lot of bad stories that you've heard out there and it's very true. And so I don't do anything specifically different from a financial side. Like we have great portfolio managers. I'm licensed to trade and do all that stuff. But I'm big on the relationship. I want to connect players to their money because I know what it's like to be disconnected. And it's not fun. And I want to set them up and so they can start buying houses and invest in their 401ks and do all those things that don't mean shit to me from like, it's not how I make money, but it means shit to me to know that I'm doing right by them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I just got some rapid fire questions that some people have asked me, and I want to go through them and see, just quick answers. It doesn't have to be too in depth. I know that there's like you were saying, there's certain things that you can and can't talk about. So, and I know that I asked you a little bit before this just to make sure. But some of the listeners, some of the people that I know, they ask me some questions, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna have a guest who kind of is dabbles and works in that field. So I'm just going to ask these questions. How long should I keep a stock?
So it depends types of accounts you have. Like if it's a tax-deferred IRA account, and you can pick off certain stocks like an Apple or an Amazon, which is expensive. But, you want to keep those stocks for a long time. If it's in a taxable type of account where you have to have 1099s at the end of every year, if you sell it within that year period and you have short-term capital gains, it's going to be taxed at your ordinary tax rate, which could be higher than your capital gains tax rate. And so you have to be mindful of taxes there. Okay. You have to also understand the type of stock you're getting in. Is it something that's cyclical? Is it something like a cruise stock, for example, right now? They've been beaten to shit and they're so distress level. I think they're going to make it out of it. I think it's going to be a long-term play, but maybe that's a stock you get in now and you reassess in 6 to 12 months and you say, okay, whatever, let's see what happens with it. I'm betting on the name brand. I'm betting on their ability to pull through this.
Perfect. So that gets into my next question, which somebody asked is, what are some good stocks to look into? Is it the big name ones that cost money, like the Apple, Disney, stuff like that? Or do you kind of venture off into like the lower lower price stocks?
I think it depends on your risk tolerance. I think, your time horizon. If for me, I feel like in the market climate we're in now, tech is going to kind of lead the way going forward. And I say that for a number of reasons. One of them being our life has changed, right?
Totally.
And everybody's Zooming now. Everybody's using iCloud-based stuff.
Digital content is king right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we're doing. And so that's how the new way to connect. And it's not that we weren't doing it before, but I think now businesses are going to realize that they can still drive revenue by going more virtual.
Right.
Without renting a 12,000 foot square space and having that overhead.
100%.
Okay.
And so you start thinking about those iCloud-based companies. You start thinking about iCloud security companies, because that's going to be the next hacking wave. I mean, it's already there, and there's already a bunch of good companies. Traditionally, dividend-paying stocks have always been really solid, but they're not growth-oriented, right? You could have some growth, like an AT&T, a Procter & Gamble, but you're doing it for the dividend. However, a lot of those stocks are like 25, 30% down. And so moving forward, there's a lot of value there. Now it's like a value, dividend, and a growth stock all in one. So if you can find companies that you like, and that's just my advice with people that kind of trade on their own, and just my own philosophy is buy companies that you believe in, that you use on a day-to-day basis, because you're one of the masses that are using it. And so in that tech space, Apple, they're sitting on, billions of dollars of cash. They can deploy cash and build facilities and build new infrastructures. Some of those 5G networks, that's the new network. We're talked about being virtual and communicating. But buy companies you like, Facebook's, Apple's, Amazon. It's a very expensive stock, but it's a legacy stock. It's a stock you can pass to your kids. You have to figure out what your entry point is. Those aren't stocks you day trade. Those are stocks you slowly dollar cost average in to have more shares. And so my advice to young people is always, if you have the ability to start a 401k, that's your like singles and doubles type of account.
Okay.
Meaning you're always dollar cost averaging in. So if you're putting in $200 every paycheck, that stuff after 10 years, after 15 years, after 20 years, that stuff accumulates over time with just you putting money in alone. But think about where we were in February 19th at the all-time highs. Your $200, you were buying in at a high, and maybe your $200 every 2 weeks wasn't going in as much. But now, March 23rd, we technically bottomed, for right now at least. And so your $200 has so much more buying power a month later than it did a month before.
So see, that's good. That's what
you want to stay disciplined and keep doing it. And so if you have the ability and you see value in the market, make a bigger contribution, when the market's kind of now, because this is money you can't touch till you're 60 anyways. I know the Secure Act and the CARES Act opened up a lot of different vehicles, but ways to access that money. But the reality is this is later date money.
Cool.
And so you get the tax deferred growth. And so that's one bucket. And then if you're going to open up just a regular taxable account because you want to start building positions, building in companies that you believe in.
Right.
Yeah.
So the last question, when somebody asks, and I guess so if you buy a Zoom stock, say Zoom, because that's out of nowhere, and somebody asked me, when do you get paid from that stock? So if that's a quick stock, if that's something you put money into, like, what would you say real quick would be a way that somebody could get paid from that stock? So say they're like, I don't know if Zoom's going to maintain, somebody else is going to jump in.
What do you mean by get paid? The investor getting paid from it?
Or the person, the investor getting paid. So say they've been in it for a while, they see the stock go up. If they want to pull out, when is it that they should collect their earnings?
Gotcha. Okay. So it's a loaded question, and so I'll tackle it this way. So if you're investing in a company like Zoom because you got it at $60 a share in the beginning of January where it was trading at, if you believe in the company, long term, maybe you just sit and hold it, right? If you believe, oh man, like this is a space where there's a lot of competition, like WebEx and from Cisco, and Microsoft has their own team network, and there's other players in the space, then maybe you figure out what your focal point is. It's like, hey, once I, double my money or I make 40% in returns, I'll get out, and then I'll try to find an entry point back in another. So that's more of not a day trader, but that's more of systematic trading. And so you set exit points, when you get in before. That's the most important thing. Right. Is before you buy the stock, what's the purpose of the stock? How long do you intend to hold it? And what's your exit strategy? Because The people that don't make money in investing are the
exit
people that have emotional investing. And so you want to be disciplined, have a plan. So you'll have stocks that you want to hold forever and just keep adding to. You'll have stocks that'll be cyclical, like, energy, oil and gas, which is a horrible sector to get into right now because it's been beaten to hell. But and it's risky. There's a lot of companies that are going to go out of business, and that's a scary time. But you just need to focus on what the premise is of the position you're buying.
Okay, cool.
So, when we started this podcast, one of the things that we talked about was what does it mean to be a bro? So it's BROxFIRE Podcast, but it's like the
BroFire
X Fire Podcast. So kind of wrapping up with you here, what does it mean to you to be a bro?
I was very fortunate. I'm still friends to this day with all the guys I grew up playing baseball with from down here, middle school, St. Thomas, college. And to me, it's loyalty. It's all about loyalty. Like, I trust those guys with my life. We can play with each other in the sense of, make fun of each other. Sometimes it's your day to get made fun of. Sometimes I always joke, sometimes you're the pigeon, sometimes you're the statue. And so
sometimes you have a days-long prank about ghosts that is going to ruin your
day
life.
and a half.
Yeah, I was the pigeon that way. I was the pigeon. But no, being a bro is about, being who you are, not being afraid to be who you are, because I'm like, hey, I grew up in a locker room. It's about having fun. It's about loyalty. Yeah. It's about trust. Like, to me, that's, you're one of the bros. If you're one of the bros, you're one of the people I trust.
Right. So now the thing that we were trying to do, we're going to start this. You're going to be the first one, so no pressure. We would love for you just to do your best bro intimidation, impression.
Your best bro impression. What's a bro sound like to you, bro?
If you heard some of my family members talk, like, they're all some of them from Bensonhurst in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And my Uncle Joe is crazy, but he always
give us a little impression.
So you'd be like,
"Oh, I'm terrible." They make fun of me how I talk because I don't have.
But like, if you were to be like, "Hey, bro, what are you doing today?" What would be your best bro?
How would you say that, like a bro?
What's up, bro?
There you go. Awesome.
That's it. What would yours be?
What's up, bro?
Mine's like, "Yo, bro, what's
up, bro?
Hey, bro, what are you doing later?" That's mine.
Bro, I'm having some whiskey and a cigar.
Bro.
All right. Well, where can listeners find more about you online? Instagram, Twitter, where do you like to send them?
I use Twitter, more informational based. It's just Twitter and Instagram's the same. It's just @_Giannotti.
Nice.
So I don't use Facebook all that much unless I'm trying to remember people's birthdays.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one of the greatest uses of it. We'll put that information at the bottom here, guys, so you can see how to get in touch with G if you want to. Okay, the last thing that we're going to do, we would like to close it out with the Bro Really story of the week. So Will hasn't heard this. You haven't heard this. Okay. Disneyland Paris visitor tripping on LSD falls into the Adventureland Lake and then turns up naked after a 130-person search. Okay. It wasn't until after an exhaustive 130-person search and rescue mission, which included 30 firefighters, 10 divers, 10 policemen, and 80 Disneyland Paris employees, and a police helicopter with thermal imaging camera, that the effort to find a 32-year-old Swiss man was completed, as he was located in a near Peter Pan-themed area that this author has never been to, so can't properly describe. Basically, he was walking in the middle of the road. He did not have a centimeter of clothes on him, and he walked barefoot. The shock driver who found the Swiss man told the magazine. I stopped, got out of my car, and went to meet him. So, how can you, first of all, go to Disneyland Paris, trip on LSD, end up naked, fall into a lake, and then have 130 people look for you, and nobody finds you except for the driver on the side of the road?
Walking naked.
Yeah.
He must have been in It's a Small World.
Yeah, that is a small... Dude, it is like...
Like, especially in a place like Disney World, where they have eyes everywhere on everything, like cops and, like, undercover cops.
They have cameras watching the trash
everywhere.
cans.
And they can't find the naked guy who falls into the lake?
Yeah, the LSD hopped up. But that many. I mean, who was this guy, first of all?
Just
because
some dude.
I believe that if I fell into a lake, they wouldn't give two shits. They'd be like, really, bro? You fell in? Get yourself out. This guy, they turned down.
Well, that's going to be his story for the rest of his life. He's going to be like,
probably
look what happened to me.
Yeah, I would totally blast that on Facebook.
Yeah.
I'd be like, yep, and I was naked. And I came out. Were you naked? Was he naked when he fell in?
He was naked when they found him.
But he wasn't naked when he went in?
Who knows? He probably doesn't know.
That's awesome.
All right.
All right. Well, that's awesome. And, I really, again, appreciate you being our guest. This is our time where I say goodbye. No,
now it's time
you're not
to
gonna do
say
that.
goodbye.
It's funny because he put on this thing when we chat, just so everyone knows. He's like, this is the part where we say goodbye. And that's what I'm supposed to say.
Yeah.
And I'm going to change that because I don't like
You don't want to sing the Mickey Mouse song every time I say goodbye?
You get excited every time. So we just want people to remember, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. It's YouTube. It's a red button. Like I said, it says subscribe. Please. We're going to have more guests. We're going to always want to entertain you guys. And also we have some, awesome stories about people
tripping on
LSD. Tripping on LSD and coming out naked. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. But most importantly, remember to man up, cut the bullshit. And just laugh, bro.
Laugh.
Just laugh, laugh.
Life's too short, man. I'll drink to that.
Yeah, laugh.
Drink to that.
I fucking already drank mine.
Oh, well, of course
I was enjoying it as I was listening to the stories. I have a sip.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
See you. Thank you.